Hey guys, welcome to this week's reaction time episode. It's a special episode, not only because it's the NCAA preview show, but it's a late night preview show because it is 11:37 p.m. on a Tuesday night, and Ben and I are here to preview this weekend's matchup. Ben, how are you feeling?
Tired currently, but also amped up because this is the best weekend of the sporting year, and I will hear no arguments to the contrary.
Yeah, and it's in Kansas City, so it's just like 3 hours down the road.
Yeah, it's great.
I I really want us to stray from our usual, right? Go weight by weight because I think once we get to the nitty-gritty of nationals, there's just like way more that goes beyond just sitting like, all right, let's go through all these brackets. So I'll start with a general question for you so we can dive into it. Outside of Younger and David, because all eyes are on those two this weekend, generally.
Yep.
If you had to pick one guy in the lineup that you're looking forward to the most, whether it's because you like their draw, you're looking forward to what their performance might be, who would that be on a first glance?
For me, it's okay. You said one. I'm gonna say two just because
Okay.
I can't help myself. It's gonna be Anthony Echemendia and Casey Swiderski. Um, Anthony won the Big 12 championships. We've seen his confidence grow exponentially this year.
Mm-hmm.
Um, from a guy who wrestled a handful of collegiate dual meets and 0 tournaments to start the year, to a guy who has wrestled in multiple tournaments, Cliff Keen, Big 12s, wrestled in multiple dual meets, has gotten progressively better throughout the year. I'm really excited to see what he can do in March in this NCAA championships because, and Dresser mentioned this a little bit during media availability, he's so good on his feet that realistically, who is better than him on his feet? Jesse Mendez from Ohio State is the number 1 ranked guy at the weight. He's 25-2. I see this weight at 141 being wide open.
Mm-hmm.
Bo Bartlett from Penn State is the number 2 seed at 19-1. There's an opportunity here for Anthony Echemendia to wrestle in the championship and frankly to be a national champion. I think the floor for him is an All-American. And before the Big 12 tournament, I wasn't super convinced of that. I was like, oh, we'll see what he does in tournament setting. We'll see if he can beat Cale Happel again. And he did. So now I'm like, all right, floor for Anthony is probably All-American. And he has a legitimate shot to wrestle in the national championship. So I really am looking forward to him and seeing what he can do once he steps out on the mat on Thursday.
Mm-hmm.
And then Casey Swiderski, he's a guy who was a round of 12 guy last year and kind of got screwed. Not kind of, absolutely got screwed in the Big 12 tournament. He should have wrestled in the championship round, but the ref decided to not call a stall call when the other guy was stalling. And that's unfortunate for Casey. Grand scheme of things, it matters only the fact that Casey won't be able to say he's a multi-time. He still might be able to say he's a multi-time Big 12 champion, but he won't be able to say he's a 3-time Big 12 champion. He's going to have to settle for 2-time or 1-time Big 12 champion because he, unfortunately, he didn't get a stall call when he deserved to get one. But he wrestled back for 3rd place. And in those 2 wrestle back matches for the consolations and then the 3rd place match, he was a man on a mission. He absolutely destroyed the 2 guys he wrestled. So Casey is wrestling as well as we've seen him wrestle all year, despite the 3rd place result at Big 12s. And we've seen him this year, similar but very different to Anthony, in that we've both seen their mindsets grow, but they've grown in different ways. With Anthony, it's all about confidence. With Casey, it's all about that controlled anger that he has, that controlled aggressiveness. And we've seen him be able to harness that and really get going at that weight. So he's another guy. He's seeded 8th, but I think that's pretty low for him. And by low, I mean I think he could probably finish higher than 8th and not be surprised at all by that. I don't hate his draw. Obviously, he gets the 1 seed in the quarterfinal. He would get the 1 seed in the quarterfinals if he were to make that, and that's Ridge Lovett of Nebraska, who's 24-1. Ridge is a very good wrestler. He had a very long unbeaten streak until relatively recently, and I forget who beat him off the top of my head. But he's a very good wrestler. But I mean, I'm not going to say I'm not going to say Casey beats him, but I wouldn't be surprised if it happened. And he's another one. Casey, he was round of 12 guy last year. I think that's his floor is round of 12 again, but I am expecting him to be an All-American. Like, I would be pretty surprised if he did an All-American. I'd like to see him finish somewhere, assuming he doesn't beat Ridge Lovett, which would be a very difficult match. I'd like to see him finish anywhere between 3 and 6, somewhere in that range. So those two guys, Anthony and Casey, I'm really excited for, just from that level and from the level of Anthony's selflessness is what's allowed this to happen. We've talked about at length this year about Anthony cutting down to 141 to make sure Casey gets in the lineup, and Casey has taken full advantage of that opportunity because Anthony's the one that beat him in the wrestle-offs, and that was a contentious wrestle-off. But I think you said when you're down in Kansas City that Casey was the first one to support Anthony, and Anthony was one of the first people to support Casey after their matches. So just seeing that bond grow from what it was at the beginning of the year, where those two seemingly did not like each other, has been really great to see.
Well, and it's like, yeah, I go back to the wrestle-offs when you and I were just sitting there for fun, just there to watch. And man, when was it Casey threw his headgear? I was just like, ooh, that's going to be rough. So yeah, it is funny to now look at Tulsa and look at where we're at, where I think I said this on the podcast, where during Casey's match, Anthony was literally laying on the ground next to me, like on his stomach, like hand in his hand, his head in his hands, watching this really explosive match go down for Casey. And Casey was waiting for Anthony right after he won his title, which I thought was so cool. So I agree. I do love the parallels. I do the same thing when I compare Anthony and Younger, since, you know, they're best friends, they're childhood best friends, and they're both so good at wrestling, but their personalities and the way they go about their success is very different, right? Their confidence is displayed in very differently, which is so interesting to watch as you get to know them and as we get to talk to them. Like, their interviews are very different, which is, I think, I don't know, it's kind of what makes the job fun, right? As we get to know them. But no, I agree. I think Anthony has put in a lot of work and done it silently. And now people are like, oh, that guy's no joke. Whereas Casey's been a little louder. So people have people have known who Casey is, but he's finally doing things to where they're working out a little more in his favor. Obviously, Big 12 match didn't. And I think because of the way, like you said, he's contained it, but I think watching how he bounced back after that really crappy match, crappy outcome, I should say, I think that's going to make him really successful. So I agree. Those are good choices. I don't blame you for picking two. I probably would pick Casey as a strong split with Cody Chittum. I'm really excited for Cody Chittum. I've seen a lot of people on Twitter share the same sentiment, because again, I go back to Dresser telling us, like, it's your guys' job to look ahead to fun matches. And I see a lot of people looking ahead at Friday night, and they're wanting a Cody Chittum and Ja'Cory Teamer, who's the number 2 seed, who wrestles for Arizona State. They're hoping for a Friday night match between those two. And I am too, because Cody Chittum beat him. He beat him in the duel back in, what was it, first weekend of January. And oh gosh, what is Cody Chittum's seed?
14, I think.
I was going to say.
Yeah, 14.
Yes, he's 14, and he's beat the number 2 seed.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, it's just one of those where it's kind of like when I look at MJ, I feel like people rank MJ lower than he should be. And I feel like that's what's happening with Cody Chittum. And the thing, when you go back and you actually watch his losses, he's so close. He's just right there. it's just like little things that maybe need adjustments, maybe wrestle more in the first period, which is crazy to say because it's Cody Chittum. All coach ever talks about is just how like crazy he is in the workout room. And so I feel like he can make some serious damage if he finds himself on the other side of being just like a hair short. Like what if
Yep.
he's just one step ahead, which we saw with Ja'Cory Teamer. And I think he can do that again. So that's kind of where I'm looking at when I have to pick one. It's definitely like Cody Chittum, Casey Swiderski. Obviously, Anthony's a sleeper, and that people are just like, "Oh yeah, he's good," and then they just kind of like Evan Frost. He's good, so he's going to do his job.
I was just about to bring up Evan Frost, like, and I tweeted this during the Big 12 championships. Evan Frost is like the basketball player who scores 15 points, gets 7 rebounds and 8 assists. And it's just super quiet. He just goes about his business, doesn't say anything.
Mm-hmm.
It's the quietest 15, 8, and 7 you've ever seen in your life. And that's Evan Frost in the wrestling world. He's the 8th seed. He is the Big 12 runner-up, was a takedown away from going to sudden victory against Dayton Fix. He's a very good wrestler.
Yeah.
He got multiple bonus point wins, and he's a freshman. And somehow he just keeps sliding under everybody's radar. And he's another guy who, again, round of 12 would be I think the floor for him. But being a freshman All-American is on the table for him. And that's super exciting.
Well, and I think the fun part with this lineup, right? You have Kyson Tarakina, Casey Swiderski, David Carr, Will Feldkamp, Younger Bastida. They've all competed in the national tournament. They know what they're walking into. But we also get the other side where you have Evan Frost, Anthony Etchemendia, Cody Chittum, and MJ Gaitan who haven't. So it's like we get these guys who already know what they're walking into. But then you have these really scrappy young guys who haven't, but can make some serious damage. And man, Evan Frost, can you imagine? Can we just talk about it for a second? Imagine if he had gotten Dayton Fix. Not beat him, but like let's say he did push it to sudden victory. Imagine how many people would be like all eyes on Evan Frost. Like this guy actually got Dayton Fix in a potential like pressure moment. Like especially with a guy who is so like even keeled and not a lot of emotions, and he's just showing
Almost
up.
No emotion.
Yeah, like he's just showing up to do his job. I feel like I need to look for his brother and see if maybe his brother's showing more emotion. I imagine his twin brother Jacob is like maybe more emotional in the stands watching his brother do what he's doing. They still have blonde hair, so maybe we can find him a lot easier in the crowds this time.
There you go. Yeah.
In the wrestling notes, I would like to bring this up about Casey Swiderski. Andy included, Casey Swiderski has lost only one match since his return from an injury, which caused him to miss most of December and January. I hadn't thought about that.
Mm-hmm.
Only one match.
Yep. He's rolling. He is absolutely rolling.
He is feeling himself. And I would love to know what Casey Swiderski is thinking right now because of just how explosive he's been in terms of like supporting his team and, you know, being really confident about his team and, you know, being like smuggish about it in like the best way. And I would love to know what he's telling his guys as they're, you know, getting ready to compete. When we look at David, I want to bring up what Coach Dresser said about him this week, which I thought was really interesting. So, was it you that asked about how he felt about David's seed?
Yep.
And Coach talked about, basically he said, David isn't used to being the underdog anymore. You know, he never really has been because he's David Carr. And he said, this is a really unique like situation to be in where he gets to go hunt instead of being the hunted. And I actually walked away from it and I was like, you know what? That is a really good point. Like David Carr is so good at wrestling. We talk about it all the time, but like now he gets to be in a different light, right? Like, and you can see it. Just scroll Twitter. Go scroll big Twitter, like big wrestling Twitter accounts, and everyone's talking about Keegan O'Toole and only Keegan O'Toole. And I don't think that's necessarily like an insult to David. They're just looking at the seeds for what they are. David's the number 4 seed, Keegan's the number 1 seed. It is what it is. But I almost think that this is going to be like, if we go back to the David we talk about being an entertainer, this is almost like a game. If you think about it, right? Like, you're the number 4 seed. Okay, watch what I can go do now as a 4 seed when he's going to be doubted, which is a really crazy like concept. Like, what do you think about what Dresser said?
I loved it. And we've seen it a little bit. He said, yeah, David doesn't get to be the hunter very often.
Mhm.
And the one time he was the hunter was when he won his national championship at 157 pounds. He was the hunter in that case. He was having to beat the seniors when he was a sophomore or whatever he was back then.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, I mean, it's exciting. I mean, as annoying as it is that we're not going to get Keegan O'Toole, David Carr in the championship, I don't hate his draw. He's going to get Dean and Mitty in the quarterfinals, who he beat 2-1 earlier this year in the dual meet, but
Mhm.
last year I think he beat him 7-2. So that's a match where if David finishes some shots more, I like David a lot in that matchup, and I kind of like that matchup more so because Dean and Mitty is like a mini Keegan O'Toole. And I mean that both literally and figuratively. Keegan O'Toole is a massive human being for 165 pounds. I don't know what his weight cut is, but it has to be significant because he's huge.
Yeah, he is huge.
Um, but Dean and Mitty is in that same Keegan O'Toole mold where he's kind of long. He does not let you finish shots easily. Like David gets to that swing single that he does all the time, and he finishes it against 99% of people, but against Keegan O'Toole he couldn't, and against Dean and Mitty he couldn't. Now the difference in the Dean and Mitty match is David was able to ride him pretty good. Um, so I'm interested to see what David does in that Dean and Mitty match, assuming it happens, to see what potentially he might do against Keegan O'Toole in the next matchup, to see what he does differently to finish some of those takedown attempts. Does he go away from the swing single? Because we've seen David have a pretty broad repertoire of shots. Did he just fall in love with the swing single a little bit too much? Is he going to try something else? So I like his matchups both in that I think he can beat Dean Mitty,
Mhm.
and two, I think that'll be a good preliminary test of what's going to work against some of these more rangy, kind of more defensive wrestlers. And when I say defensive, I don't mean that negatively. Younger Bastida just beat the number 2 guy in the country in Wyatt Hendrickson by defensive wrestling. Like his counter shots, his reattacks against Wyatt Hendrickson were some of the best things I've ever seen in the sport of wrestling. So being a defensive wrestler is not necessarily a bad thing in this context. Keegan O'Toole is one of the best defensive wrestlers in the country at any weight. So that's not a bad thing. He can get to his own offense. I'm not saying defensive wrestling disparagingly in this context. But I'm interested to see what David can do against a defensive wrestler like Keegan O'Toole and Dean Mitty. Just because we've seen him be successful the last couple of times, he hasn't been as successful with it. So, yeah, that's David's draw. I like it. I think it could be great for him.
Like, you kind of came around to it after the initial reaction.
Yeah, I still think it's what's the right way to say this? Bull crap. And like I get that the matches need to matter, and he did lose to Julian Ramirez.
Right.
I get it. But I think dodging also needs to be penalized. And I'm Keegan O'Toole dodging David, fine, whatever. You absolutely beat him. That's great. Uh Julian Ramirez is a whole different thing, at least in my opinion. That
I would
what
agree.
Cornell did was like what Missouri, like that was absolutely ducking.
Yes.
And there's no ifs,
100%.
ands, or buts about it.
Yeah.
So that's the part where I take issue with David's seed is yes, the results need to matter, and Julian did beat David. I will not concede anything other than that. I agree 100%. But they should have wrestled the second time.
100%.
So
I agree.
that's the part I'm annoyed about. Other than that, though, we've heard wrestlers and coaches say this all the time too. If you want to be the best, you have to beat who is ever in front of you. Like at some point, you have to wrestle number one guy.
Yeah.
We expected that to be in the finals. It's going to happen in the semifinals.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, well. What difference does that make for David? At some point, he's going to have to beat him anyway. So why not do it in the semifinals?
Right. Like, I don't look at David and think, oh, the argument behind his seed was because we wanted him to have the easiest draw possible. Like it really, with David, it's never really that at all. I look forward to David's draw regardless, because the athlete that he is, when he goes up against anyone, I'm not like worried about it.
Yep.
And honestly, if we want to look at it this way, I guess selfishly, Friday night, of course, the championship matches are incredible, and it's so cool when the stage is set up. But like Friday night is the most intense night of the entire tournament. It's like the coolest thing ever. Aiden is with us. I hope someday we get to take Aiden and he can experience the blood round and he can experience the dog bone setup, because imagine Keegan O'Toole and David Carr in Friday night's atmosphere. Like, knives are out, people are losing their minds, and now we have these two going at it for a chance to go compete for a title. Like, it just adds a whole other layer to it that is so different when we see them go head to head for a title, which I don't know. I kind of look forward to it if we get there, only because, like I said, that Friday night is just so crazy an atmosphere. I can't imagine it when it comes to David and Keegan in their final matchup ever. So that's kind of how I feel
in folk
there.
style. They'll
Yes,
probably
and
wrestle in freestyle a couple times.
I was going to say, I anticipate that it's at some point in their post-college careers, they might meet again. So, but no, I'm excited. And honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if David really does have some new moves, because it's like, okay, well, at Big 12s, this is how he wrestled against Keegan. It didn't go his way. It wasn't super great. Well, we've seen what he does when he gets in those situations, right? He comes back stronger, and he even made the comment himself this week, like, I can't wait to go out there and just like wrestle free. What does David Carr wrestling free look like? Like, I don't know what that looks like. He's such a technically sound wrestler. What does David Carr just letting it fly look like? I would love to see that. And we're going to see that, right? This is it. Like, we need to literally talk about how this is where David's career ends. Is this in the next like 3-4 days? 4 days.
Yeah. Evan Magg from George Mason University is going to be the first one to find out. Good luck, Evan. I'll be thinking about you.
I'm going to say, what's easy then?
29th, I think.
Okay. No,
Yeah,
I think no one's more nervous for this weekend for David Carr than Nate Carr Sr. is. That man loses his mind on the broadcast, loses his mind Matt's side. Can you imagine him this weekend? Are there any more Carrs? Are there younger siblings left?
I think David's the youngest, isn't he?
Okay, I was going to say, I thought David was the baby.
I'm pretty sure he is.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
I wonder how this feels for him now, like looking back. Because, like, do you remember when we interviewed David back when he was going into his first tournament, and it was like he talked so much about wanting to build this legacy that kind of mirrored his dad, but at the same time, like, competed with his dad. Obviously, his journey has looked a little different than he wanted, but I'm so curious how David feels sitting today going into his final one, and like what his dad's preaching, since his dad's, really, really big on those like big mental and emotional preparation. And I forget what the guys used to call them. Mental practices.
Yeah. I think that's what they called it. Yeah.
When they would get to talk to Coach Carr. I'm so curious what those look like for David now that it's like, all right, buddy, this is it. This is all we get. So, Younger Bastida. This man, Younger is a very sweet guy. If anyone gets to interview him, I'm not kidding you, he is so nice. He
one of the nicest guys.
Truly answers any questions, shakes hands, happy to be here. I want to know where his attitude came from, because I thought that his tweet where he did the like Grim Reaper meme with, like Hendrickson and Kirkfleet and Colton Schultz and Elam. Did he
Yep.
add? Did he
Elam.
add
Yep.
Lucas Davison on there? I don't think that he did.
Yeah, Lucas Davison was the first one.
He
He was the
added him.
first door.
That was such a good meme. I didn't know he could bless us more with his video that came out today. What is that from? Do you know?
I have no idea.
It's like, Aiden, I don't know if you're able to find it or pull it up, but like, so Younger puts out a tweet that says 2 days out, see you all in KC, let's get it done. Hashtag Air Bastida, hashtag wrestling community, hashtag have fun, hashtag unstoppable, hashtag are you ready? And in this video, it's like his head is photoshopped onto this like giant monster thing that's just eating the rest are they like
He's smashing and eating the astronauts because
astronauts?
Younger's this space monster thing.
Yeah, and he's
And yeah,
there it is.
Aiden's got it pulled up. If you're not
Thank you,
watching
Aiden.
this, you should watch this.
I just like it's literally like Younger destroying everyone.
Yeah. And poor Wyatt almost got away there.
Yeah.
Not quite.
And then it ends with Greg Kirkfleet hiding behind a rock.
Yeah.
When I saw that, I would love to know, what does Colton Schultz think?
I know.
He's a goofy guy. Like, is this funny to them? Like, do they think it's funny?
I hope
you need
so.
to acknowledge the new profile pic too.
Yeah, his new profile picture goes hard too. It's him in the Grim Reaper costume.
I was gonna say, I did not know he changed that.
Yeah, I saw him tweet that picture a couple days ago. I think someone designed it for him. So,
I would say Matt Breton. I'm sorry if I butchered your last name. He tweeted it and tagged Younger, so that's hilarious. That is so funny. So again, nicest human being, fresh off the mat, committing a crime on the map, getting Wyatt Hendrickson on his back twice, the one leg counterattack, like, and then he's just like, oh my gosh, hey guys, thank you so much for being here. Shakes hands. Like, so when I see him do this stuff, I'm like, God, can you imagine Younger sitting on his phone, like cackling to himself, like, haha, I'm so funny. Like, what does Craig Kirkfleet think?
Greg has to love it, doesn't he?
I really hope so.
And like similar to his Grim Reaper tweet, I looked through all the quote tweets and replies of this one, just waiting for a Penn State fan to be mad or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And they all love it. Again, universally, everyone loves it. It's just like, and on one hand, what are you going to tell them that you don't like it? And like, okay, you're going to tell Younger that, but like legitimately, it seems like everyone just likes because it is relatively lighthearted, lighthearted trash talk of it all. And it's just entertainment, right? And that Dresser says that all the time. He wants his guys to be entertainers. He might prefer it more on the mat than on social media.
Yeah, this probably gave him a bit of a heart palpitation. Like, let's be honest. Dresser was probably like, gosh, damn it, again.
Yeah. But it worked the first time, right? So
it did. I'll give you this. It's Dresser's Dresser out because it's like, hey man, you got to get the job done first.
And then you can do this.
Yeah, and this is a goal of mine, but like, I don't know if you ever saw, like, was Dresser doing interviews talking smack like this to this caliber? Probably not, I'm gonna guess. But I don't know. Dresser's kind of a cheeky guy.
He can be a little bit of a needler. He can needle people pretty good.
I'm gonna add that to my list of I want to watch all of their old matches and also their old interviews, because I can only imagine what Kevin Dresser is like in an interview. But no, I think this is funny. And like, you go back to when Gable Steveson was around, that dominant man. He was incredible of an athlete. And I think he changed a lot of the game too at heavyweight. But like, when was trash talk like this ever at heavyweight?
Mm-hmm.
Like, When is it ever this fun? I don't think it is.
It
Like
hasn't been. I don't think.
I was gonna say, can you think of like a weight where the guys were so like neck and neck and there was fun trash talk between them? Like I'm trying to think if there was ever anything said by like Cassiope and I don't think there was.
No, I think the problem, if we're talking heavyweight specifically, went straight from Kyle Snyder to Gable Stevenson, who are like two of the best wrestlers in the world.
Right.
So like, who's gonna trash talk those guys? Greg
Yeah.
Kirkfleet, while a very, very, very good wrestler, not gonna take that away from him, is probably not Gable Stevenson or Kyle Snyder. He could prove me wrong. I could be wrong about
Mhm.
that, but I don't think I am. And the only other weight that immediately comes to mind of two guys of near equal caliber are David Carr and Keegan O'Toole. And
And
those
two
guys have
guys are
way too much
so
respect for each
I would say
other.
they're
Like,
so respectful.
yeah, they're not going to talk any trash ever about each other. So, that's the one that immediately comes to mind of like, yeah, those two guys pretty almost equal caliber, if
Can
not
you
equal caliber,
can
but
you
they're just
imagine
not going to
David
talk
Carr?
trash.
Can you imagine David Carr sending out a tweet like this with the
No,
165 field? I can't.
I can't. I don't know how I would react. Like with Younger, I love it. I think it's the best thing ever. With David, I'd be like, is David okay? Can we get a welfare check on
Yeah,
David
like
Carr? Did his account get hacked? Like, what's going on
I
here?
was just gonna say, did someone hack him? Is this him telling us he's been kidnapped? I just, and we need both, right? We need that sportsmanship. Like Keegan and David have done a really good job of showing people that you can have two top guys shake hands at the end of it. They can
Mhm.
leave the mat and still respect each other and acknowledge the talent one has over the other in that specific moment, right? And I don't know, Younger just makes it fun.
He
And
does.
Wyatt Hendrickson was shaking his hand and they were laughing and smiling on the podium. And you don't think he's seen them? He's obviously seen them. So,
Mhm.
like, I just love this side of it too. And don't get me wrong, I like the third side of it, right? Like the Casey Swiderski side of it, where you're talking smack, pointing fingers, like you're not laughing, like you're serious,
No.
you're gonna hurt someone. And
Yeah.
I love that side of it too. But I feel like we haven't had the side that Younger's brought. And I would be like, I would Kale Kale Sanderson would probably never comment anything that interesting about it, but I would love to hear, like, a candid response from Kale Sanderson of what he thinks about Iowa State's heavyweight, talking this much smack the past, like, 3 weeks about his heavyweight.
Yeah.
But
That would be a great interview because Kale doesn't talk a lot,
no, he
but
really doesn't. So I don't say that in an insulting way.
yeah.
He's just
No,
quiet in his
he's quiet.
interviews.
He's a quiet dude.
Love Kale
When you're that
Sandy.
dominant and you're that good, it's just like,
Yeah.
yeah, the results are there. You guys can see them.
Yeah, I
I'm
was
the
gonna say,
best.
sorry. I shouldn't say I love Kale Sanderson. Someone's gonna get mad at me.
Too
We're
late.
not even
Well,
gonna get
it's past midnight. It happens.
I was
Kale
gonna say, we're not
Sanderson's
even
awesome.
gonna
I'm not ashamed of it. He's awesome.
He
So,
is, and I love how much it bothers people when he doesn't react on the
mhm.
mad side, like, during the Iowa match, they were so mad. Anyways, Penn State's gonna blow the team race out of the water.
They sure are.
If you're a gambler, I hear you should go gamble your life savings on Penn State winning the
Take out a second
tournament.
mortgage, take out a home loan, just take out any loan you can and put all of that money on Penn State. Don't do that. That's not financial advice.
That I
Absolutely
was
do
gonna say,
not take
this
out a
is not
loan.
don't do that. This is not Psychophanatic sponsored advice. Oh my gosh. I'm not a
Don't gamble,
gambler.
kids. I don't even have a
I was
FanDuel
saying
account. I don't
yeah,
gamble
I
at
was saying,
all. But
I'm personally not a gambler, but I like to retweet the money lines because I know people find those really interesting. When you look at Iowa State in the team race, I'm gonna tell you my take, and I'm gonna remove all, like, caution from it. Like, I'm not talking from a place of, like, "Here's the lineups, and here's what I'm thinking." I was thinking about it the other day, and I was like, "You know what? I would love for Iowa State stars to align because Dresser's not wrong that yes, you need to go in there and you need to wrestle well, but you also sometimes need to catch some breaks. And we talked about how they got that at Big 12s, right? They had so many first round matches, which is why we saw them get so many bonus points. I would love to see them catch some breaks. at NCAAs to where the stars align. I want Will Feldkamp to be a savage in whatever area he ends up in. I want him to rack up pins, ruin some guys' weekends, send for MJ Gaitan. God knows what he's going to do, but he can rack in those bonus points. I want Iowa State to get a team trophy, right? I want them to get it. And I want it to just be one giant middle finger to everyone who's probably like, everyone's like, oh, who's in the hunt? Who has a good chance this season? Who hasn't before? Several people have said Iowa State. Well, I want them to do it and do it well. I want people to be shocked by this because I know this is what happens, and I've seen it in wrestling. People will start talking about certain teams like, oh yeah, they're gonna do so well, like they're in the hunt, they're in there. And then we get to the tournament and that first day depletes dreams. Real quickly ruins the race, and real quickly people start to realize, okay, what we thought was going to happen isn't going to happen. Just like I won the pre-seed like conversations, they were like finishing 7th or something, which then they somehow go and finish 2nd, which is so annoying. It, like you said, it's after midnight. I'll say it. It's annoying. I would like that to actually happen. Like, imagine that. Just imagine a world where it actually happens. What a gigantic middle finger. Kevin Dresser gets to walk out of this, just money bag slinging over his shoulders. I would love that. But we gotta get through day one first. But that's my take. I think if we can get into an actual conversation about like how many All-Americans do we think they'll have? Who do we think can make it to the finals? I think that's where we go next. But I want to know if you had to think of your true fan take, what do you want this to look like?
My true fan take is Penn State's going to win. That's fine. Everyone should. If you have not accepted the fact that Penn State's going to win, start accepting that fact now. It's going to happen. But I mean, I was talking about this with some people. If Iowa State finished 2nd, I wouldn't be surprised. And if Iowa State finished 9th, I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah.
Because everyone after Penn State is so even. Like the number 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 teams in the team rankings this year have all just like cycled through. Like at one time, Michigan was number 2. At one time, Iowa was number 2. Iowa State was number 3 for a while, then number 5. Oklahoma State climbed up to number 2, and then they lost, so then they were number 5, and then they got destroyed by Iowa State in the Big 12 tournament. So, like, what are these teams? Lehigh is really good. When did that happen? NC State's really good. So, there's these teams that are all super evenly matched on paper. And truly, so, like, my super fan take is, hey, let's get Iowa State to finish 2nd. And there is a very clear path for that to happen. And I guess we can transition from superfan into how does this actually happen. The team race after Penn State is going to be decided by a handful of team points. And what does that handful of team points look like? It looks like Kyson Terrakina winning a couple matches on the backside of the bracket. It looks like MJ Gaitan and Will Feldkamp picking up pins and bonus points for Iowa State. I don't know that either one of them All-Americans, but if you pin your first round match, which they both could, you fall to the backside in your second round match and you pick up a couple more pins, well, most teams are getting a half point for wins on the backside of the bracket. Suddenly you're getting a point or more for wins on the backside of the bracket. And those points add up like we saw at the Big 12 championships. So it looks like that. It looks like David Carr finishing at least 3rd. It looks like Younger Bastida finishing at least 3rd, but probably wrestling in a championship. Same thing with David Carr. It looks like Casey and Anthony being All-Americans and potentially Evan Frost. Here's what I'll say. If Evan Frost, Casey Swiderski, Anthony Etchemendia, David Carr, and Younger Bastida all All-American, Iowa State finishes 2nd. I have almost no doubt about that. If all 5 of those guys All-American, Iowa State finishes 2nd, especially if David and Younger wrestle in championship matches. Now, realistically, does that happen? Probably not, unfortunately. But if you get David and Younger who are going to All-American barring injury, those 2 will All-American barring injury. If you get 2 more, or maybe even 1 more, you're finishing probably with a team trophy if you get points from the other guys who are not going to All-American, right? Like Zach Redding last year was a round of 12 guy out of nowhere.
Right.
If MJ Gaitan can do that, excellent. I love that. That's like, I would love that for MJ because he probably gets bonus points against a couple of those guys because he's a pinner, and pinners are always dangerous in March. So, that's the super fan take, transitioning into some sort of realistic path of how to get there. Top 4 teams get a team trophy at the end of it. If you go just based off seeds right now, Oklahoma State finishes 4 with 55 team points. Iowa State finishes 5th with 53.5 team points. That's a 1.5 team point difference. Now, we just saw this last weekend where Iowa State more than made up that difference with bonus points. So if Iowa State can rack up a few more bonus points, Iowa State finishes with a team trophy according to seeds. So it's going to be really exciting. The team race outside of Penn State will be truly excellent to watch. And if Iowa State wrestles like they did down in Tulsa, I see a team trophy in its future.
Well, and we've talked a lot about this, like the fire and the passion that these guys have for doing that is the most in all the seasons I've covered this team, and you and I have covered them the same. We've covered Kevin Dresser since he started, right? Of all the teams, the team that has had the most confidence and the one that gives me the most confidence that they can do it is this one.
By far.
Like, I really do think they can do it. Like, that's not even me saying, like, wearing an Iowa State hat. Like, I genuinely think that Iowa State can walk out of this weekend with a team trophy. I'm sure that if the superstition in me steps in, I don't want to be saying that out loud, but the Big 12 showed that. The Big 12 showed something that that's been kind of like the gum on the bottom of Kevin Dresser's shoe, right? Remember how sick and tired he was of talking about how Iowa State was a good dual team, but not a good tournament team? Well, he finally got to shut the haters up about that. And it wasn't even haters. They were a good dual team and were a bad tournament team. Like, they really were. The numbers showed it, because we would sit and we'd talk about what these guys were capable of, but then we'd go into the tournament and they would crumble and it would just not meet expectations. And then suddenly we'd be looking at Iowa State barely making it in the top 10. And now we're sitting here like comfortably, if they just wrestle to their seeds based on current predictions, they can finish 5th. You know, like, that is a really good feeling to have. And I think that these guys are crazy enough. Like, I think of like, I thought of this from Big 12's, like the crazy look that Metcalf would get in his eyes when he would wrestle. Like, you see that look in these guys. You see that look in Casey. You see that look in MJ. Like Cody Chittum, self-explanatory. David Carr and Younger Bastida want this and walk the talk, right? Like, they are doing the things. So it's just like, I think they can do it. I really do think they can. It's the unfortunate thing is the tournament is just really, really hard, and it can very quickly go against what you thought you were going to do. So that's what makes me nervous, is that there's just a lot of room for error. But like you said, the field is really crazy once you step out and look at everybody who's competing for those top 3 spots behind Penn State. It could go a lot of ways. And Iowa State matches up pretty good against all of them, in my opinion.
Yep.
Like, this isn't the Big 12's. Oklahoma State isn't the big team on the block on this one. So, and I'm not worried about Oklahoma State anymore.
No.
We saw that they can have as many guys as they want in the finals. It doesn't necessarily work out in their favor.
Nope. Parker Keckeisen's still there.
Parker Keckheisen. People are like, Aaron Brooks, he needs to get through Aaron Brooks first. And I'm like, okay. I feel it in my bones. It's this year. I have not watched Aaron Brooks wrestle like a single second this year. I'll be honest.
Well, he's at 197 this year, Aaron Brooks is.
Oh, gosh. I'm telling you. It is. What time is it now? It's 12:30. About.
Yeah. So,
I think it's gonna be fun. I think it's gonna be a really fun tournament, even just outside of Iowa State. I think 125 is gonna be so fun. It doesn't
It'll
matter
be
who you're
super
rooting
fun.
for.
Yeah.
That is gonna be so freaking fun. If you wanna talk about a weight class, it's gonna be really fun on Friday night. It's gonna be a good one. I look forward to that one. So,
And I look forward to the upsets. I mean, who
yeah.
would have ever guessed Spencer Lee would get pinned by Matt Ramos last year? I don't
Listen.
that something like that probably doesn't happen this year, but
Mhm.
I mean, there's going to be upsets like that. Like a 1 or 2 seed's going to lose to a 15 seed, and people are like, how and why? And we're like, don't ask me hard questions. I don't know. But yeah, no, it's super fun. This is, like I said, this is the best time of the sporting year. Obviously, wrestling, I'm biased, but you get the first round of the NCAA basketball tournament too, both men's and women. It
Mhm.
is truly a wonderful time to be a sports fan.
Yeah, and, like, my argument always with why I think the NCAA wrestling championships are the best out of all of them, you don't have all the schools in one place in any other sport.
Bingo.
Like you're literally going to have T-Mobile Center literally host every single athlete in the country competing for national titles. And with basketball, they're scattered everywhere. With every sport, they're scattered everywhere. Well, not every sport, before someone comes and yells at me about those other sports who have similar
Track
structure.
and field.
I was going to say someone from track and field might yell. But no, it's like you have the best wrestlers in the country all in one building for 4 days. And that's incredible. And I love it. And it's so much fun. And I really hope that viewership numbers goes up. I really am curious to see what attendance numbers look like. Other people will take care of those for us and we can talk about them after the tournament. But I am really excited. I think when you look at the scope of the field for every weight class, it's the competition is just so good. So good. So I don't even know what kind of upsets I want to see. I don't. Like, do I really want to see Dayton Fix upset? No. I mean, he's
Kinda. Oh, I
like
do.
I was gonna say it like I do, but then I also think like, oh, let's close his career out with a bow. But imagine the craziness if he got upset.
I'm here for it.
I don't know. It's gonna be a really good tournament. I'm excited. All the action starts on Thursday, and I'll tweet out a whole schedule, but the tournament thankfully is a lot more accessible in terms of TV. So if Iowa State isn't playing basketball, you can easily just flip the channel over to like ESPN, what is it, like you, I think. I think I have it in front of me.
ESPN and then ESPN2. They might have one session on you, but I don't think they have many. I think it's mostly on 2 and ESPN, the mothership.
Sessions 1, 3, and 5 will be on ESPNU, and then
Okay.
ESPN2 will have sorry, not ESPN2. ESPN will have sessions 2, 4, and 6.
Okay. There you go. Sweet.
And I believe you should have access to them on ESPN Plus.
Yep.
So,
Yeah.
other than that, of course, as usual, Ben and I will be tweeting when we can. I'll make sure session updates are being sent out as much as I can as they're coming. It is a very chaotic tournament. It's on steroids compared to Big 12s.
It's so hard to keep track of everything.
I would say it's so hard to cover, but it's so fun to cover. So I'm excited. It should be a really good weekend. I hope we can meet back up here at some point and have really exciting things to talk about. So I don't even know
Absolutely.
where it's going to go, but it's going to be a good weekend. And as always, everything we've done this season, and as we head into the biggest tournament of the year, it's all courtesy of Fareway. So shout out to them for continuing to sponsor the content. And like I said, Ben and I will be back. I don't know what's going to happen this weekend. Something really crazy happens. We might throw a reaction pod in there. Who knows? We'll make sure to keep social feeds updated if that happens. But yeah, we'll be back and let's hope for the best.